This is my full review of the New Balance Fuelcell Rebel. The Rebel is a neutral, medium cushioned running shoe. 24mm stack height in the heel and 18mm in the forefoot. That's a ramp of 6mm. So overall the stack is about medium, not so high as something like a Hoka, and certainly a lot more than something like a racing flat. And the ramp of 6mm is probably on the low side, but pretty much exactly where I like it. In my size, US 11.5, it's 234 grams or 8.3 ounces. That is quite lightweight. That's very similar weight to the Hoka Rincon or the New Balance Beacon. In this video, I'll go through the components of the shoe, I'll talk about the fit, I'll list the features that I like, the features that I don't like so much, and I'll talk about how I plan to use this shoe. The upper itself hasn't really got any structure at all. It's almost cloth-like. It's a bit reinforced on the sides here with those overlays. The heel itself, the heel counter, is actually quite stiff. The top bit's not, but that's really the only structure to the upper at all. It has no tongue. It's actually a booty construction, so that's all one material there. I found it very comfortable, and that lack of structure anywhere really keeps the weight down. The midsole is what New Balance call their fuel cell. I find it very responsive. I would call it more shock absorbent than cushioned, so it definitely doesn't feel soft, but when I'm running on the hard surfaces, it absorbs a lot of that harshness. So far I've put in over 100 kilometers, and you can just see a little bit of creasing through the midsole there, so that may be a sign that it's not going to be a long-lasting shoe. I'll have to find that out myself, I suppose. If we move to the outsole, it's almost like a plastic covering there. As you can see, there's worn quite well. As I mentioned before, it's done over 100 kilometers or over 60 miles, and inside you can see, I think that's a nylon plate in there, and that adds a bit to the stiffness and the responsiveness of the ride. And at the back end here, it's the exposed rubber and a little bit more plastic on the heel. So far, going by the way that it's worn, I think the midsole is going to wear out long before the outsole does. On the outer edge of the midsole, there is this little flange that comes out. Apparently that's to help with stability a bit. To be honest, I never noticed it when running. Moving on to fit, I would say the shape of the shoe would be similar to a Saucony Kinvara or an Asics Glide Ride or the New Balance Beacon, in that it's fairly good lockdown around the ankle and midfoot and a reasonably sized toe box. Some people like to get a really tight lockdown through this shoe. My experience with the Rebel is this isn't that kind of shoe. When I did my hill repeats at Oliver's Hill and did some hard efforts down a very steep hill, I did have it tied quite tightly, but due to the very flimsy upper, my foot still moved around, and I think that's always going to happen regardless of how tight you do the laces. Instead now, I go for a far more relaxed lace tightness, and I find that just improves the overall comfort of the shoe. It wasn't that it was uncomfortable before with the tighter laces, it's now just more comfortable. You get the sensation that you're not even wearing shoes. If you have a particularly narrow foot, you may find that this might become a bit sloppy, or if you are intending to use these in a very technical race with lots of sharp corners and lots of long downhills, it's possible this shoe might not work in those scenarios. And now for my likes. Number one would be the energy return. I don't know how much is from the nylon plate and how much is from the fuel cell midsole, but this is the most energy return of any shoe I own. Admittedly, I don't have any of the new carbon plated super shoes, but this this shoe just wants to go fast. Number two, I would say the comfort. I much prefer a lightweight, unstructured upper. I don't really like the over-engineered uppers. I like it to move around, you get a little bit of stretch, and it's got a decent sized toe box, which for me is a big plus. And number three is the weight, and part of that's for having a less engineered upper, you just save that weight, and at 234 grams in an 11.5, that's a great weighted shoe. The only shoes I have lighter than these are my racing flats. And finally, price. At $200 Australian, they're $10 more than a Saucony Kinvara, so they're just the standard price for shoes, almost half price from your carbon plated super shoes that are coming on the market now. For dislikes, I'm really struggling to find anything about this shoe I don't like. Initially, I thought the laces were too long, but since I've gone to a more relaxed lacing, that's no longer a problem. If I wanted to get picky, it's only good for your faster runs. The extra energy returns means it hasn't really worked when I've tried to run slow because they just want to run fast. So it's not so much a daily trainer, but for the faster efforts, it's just fantastic. Which leads me into how I want to use this shoe going forward. To sum it up, fast efforts, so whether that's longer tempo efforts, shorter threshold efforts, and even races. At the moment, for a 5k race, I would probably go in my racing flats, but anything above that, this would be my choice of runner. If in the future I manage to buy one of the carbon plated super shoes, that may change, but at the moment this is the best racing shoe I own. With the idea of using the Rebels as my triathlon race shoe, I've done quite a few runs recently with no socks. There's only certain shoes I can actually wear with no socks and not have an issue, but I've got to say I've had the least issue of any shoe with the Rebel. Normally my limit running sockless is about 8 kilometers, and while I haven't tried to run 10k in the Rebels yet, I'm confident that there won't be an issue. On the 4 or 5 runs I've done sockless, there has been 0 hot spots, 0 discomfort. In fact, I forget that I'm not wearing socks. The only triathlon related issue with the Rebels is the speed in getting the shoes on. Currently I use the Saucony Type A8 as my racing shoe for short course triathlon. It's a racing flat, very low ramp, extremely light, and as I'll demonstrate, extremely quick and simple to get on. Compare that to the New Balance Rebel. Even if I have the laces completely loose, just the booty construction means it takes a little bit longer to get on. On this shoe here, I have put elastic laces. They're not too tight, so it's not a lot of difference to get on, but it's that booty construction, that gap to actually get your foot in, that just slows it down a little bit. I even tried running with them without laces. The result was it felt like I was running in a shoe without laces. They didn't really slip much, but it's not something I would recommend. Between these two runners, I'll continue to use the Saucony A-Type 8 for the shorter sprint triathlons and duathlons. For Olympic distance and half Ironman runs, I think I'll favour the Rebels. While I love the Saucony Type A8s, I need a bit more stability and a bit more cushioning for the longer races. There's just not enough shoe for me for when I start to tire and my technique starts to fall apart. Do I plan to buy these shoes again? Absolutely yes. Even if in the future I buy some of the carbon plated super shoes and I find they're better for racing, I'll still want to use the Rebels for those tempo efforts and threshold efforts. All in all, I think they're my all-time favourite shoe. I hope you found it interesting. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. See ya.